After years of crushing defeats and public humiliation that left him branded as television's biggest mining failure, Todd Hoffman vanished completely from the spotlight. But what the world didn't know was that the broken man was planning the most audacious comeback in mining history, one that would either vindicate his lifelong obsession or destroy him forever. This is the incredible true story of how Todd Hoffman discovered $100 million in cursed Oregon gold, and why his greatest triumph became his most dangerous burden. For 3 long years, Todd Hoffman had become a phantom in the mining world. The man who once commanded television cameras and crews across Alaska had retreated into complete silence, leaving behind only whispers about his whereabouts and speculation about his mental state. When he finally emerged from obscurity, those who encountered him barely recognized the transformed figure. His beard had grown wild and unkempt, streaked with premature gray that spoke of sleepless nights and crushing financial pressure. His voice carried a gravelly weight that hadn't existed during his television days, the tone of a man who had stared into complete ruin and somehow found the strength to claw his way back. Mining circles buzzed with rumors of secret meetings and mysterious equipment purchases. Skeptics from Alaska to Colorado dismissed him as a washed-up reality star, desperately chasing relevance. Financial analysts pointed to his bankruptcy filings as proof that Todd Hoffman was finished as a serious mining operator. Yet among the cynics, a devoted group of believers whispered that a man didn't endure the kind of public humiliation Todd had suffered unless he possessed knowledge that others couldn't understand. They remembered the burning conviction in his eyes during his darkest television moments, a religious fervor that transcended mere ambition. The moment that would define his comeback occurred on a rain-soaked Oregon ridge, captured by drone footage that would later become legendary. Todd stepped deliberately onto the muddy terrain, his boots sinking deep into the black Oregon soil with each measured step. The symbolism was unmistakable. A man being reborn from the earth that had both cursed and blessed him. Standing alone on that ridge, with storm clouds gathering overhead and the weight of years of failure pressing down, Todd made a declaration that would echo through mining history. "If I don't make it here, I'm done forever." These weren't words spoken for dramatic effect. They represented a sacred vow, thrown directly into the face of fate itself. The land that would become Todd's salvation carried its own dark history, steeped in legends that stretched back to the earliest days of westward expansion. Local historians spoke of a gold rush caravan that had vanished without trace in 1862, last seen traveling toward the very ridge where Todd now planned his desperate comeback. Pioneer diaries recovered from dusty archives revealed tantalizing clues about the lost expedition. The heavily loaded wagons had been following rumors of massive gold deposits hidden in Oregon's wilderness, but the caravan never reached its destination. Neither the wagons nor their occupants were ever found, despite extensive search efforts. Maps left by those early pioneers showed the ridge marked with crude crosses and cryptic warnings. Phrases like hollow ground and singing caves suggested the 19th century explorers had encountered something that defied understanding. Old-timers shared disturbing stories of caves that produced haunting melodies when mountain winds passed through hidden openings, as though the gold itself was crying out to be discovered. Modern geological surveys added scientific credibility to the mystical legends. The ridge sat atop unique hydrothermal deposits, ancient volcanic activity that had concentrated precious metals in unprecedented quantities. The basalt formations had protected these deposits for millions of years, making them inaccessible to crude gold rush-era techniques. But accessing those legendary deposits would require enormous financial resources that Todd no longer possessed. The process of raising capital became an exercise in desperation and creative destruction. He liquidated family heirlooms passed down through generations, mortgaged ancestral land that had been in the Hoffman family for decades, and sold his beloved vintage car collection. Vehicles that represented years of restoration work and precious memories. Traditional banks branded him financial poison, rejecting loan applications before he could complete his presentations. Just when the situation seemed hopeless, a mysterious shadow investor emerged, rumored to be a Silicon Valley mogul obsessed with treasure-hunting legends. The backer stepped forward with millions in funding, though his motivations remained deliberately obscure, fueling speculation about hidden agendas. Crew recruitment resembled a war council, as Todd reached out to former allies scarred by previous failures. Many declined immediately, citing financial losses and broken promises. Others agreed reluctantly, motivated more by loyalty than confidence. Throughout the mining community, rivals mocked his equipment purchases as overcompensation, the desperate actions of a man trying to buy success rather than earn it. The moment of truth arrived on a crisp Oregon morning, when Todd's excavators bit into the ridge's ancient soil for the first time. The crew gathered with a mixture of anticipation and skepticism, knowing the next few hours would determine whether months of preparation had been worthwhile or catastrophically wasteful. The first soil samples revealed promise that exceeded Todd's most optimistic projections. Thick gold flakes appeared in test pans within minutes of excavation, defying statistical probability and contradicting industry experts' pessimistic predictions. The concentration was so unusual that crew members initially suspected equipment contamination. When the excavators struck the first major quartz boulder, the discovery that followed stunned everyone present. The massive stones split cleanly under hydraulic pressure, revealing golden veins that resembled lightning, frozen in crystalline formation. The precious metal hadn't been scattered randomly. It had been concentrated in deliberate patterns, suggesting geological processes operating on an incomprehensible scale. Independent assay laboratories confirmed results that shocked university-trained geologists. The gold purity levels were described as geochemically anomalous, concentrations so high they challenged existing theories about how precious metals accumulated naturally. Some samples tested at purities approaching jewelry-grade gold, virtually unheard of in raw mining operations. The crew's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Hardened men who had spent decades searching for modest deposits suddenly found themselves weeping openly as pans overflowed with wealth beyond imagination. Sluices designed for normal concentrations became clogged with precious metal, requiring constant modification to process the unprecedented volumes. Standing among his celebrating crew, Todd whispered words that would become legendary. "This land has been waiting for us." The phrase captured both his mystical belief in destiny and his recognition that timing, technology, and determination had finally aligned to unlock treasures hidden for over a century. Success brought supernatural complications that seemed to multiply with disturbing persistence. Oregon's notorious weather systems descended with unusual ferocity, as though nature itself was resisting the disturbance of ancient ground. Torrential storms hammered the operation relentlessly, turning excavation sites into muddy lakes and washing away months of preparation. The flooding revealed the ridge's grisly history, Collapsed shaft entrances emerged from receding water, their rotted timber supports still bearing marks of desperate 19th-century excavation attempts. Most disturbing were the human remains that appeared with every shovel full of earth, skeletal miners fused with rusted equipment, pickaxes and gold pans that had become archaeological artifacts of fatal accidents or deliberate violence. Paranormal phenomena began manifesting with increasing frequency. Miners working night shifts reported lanterns moving through tunnels where no living person could be present. Voices echoed from underground passages, carrying conversations in languages from another era. Some crew members heard sounds of pickaxes and shovels working in areas where no current operations existed. The psychological impact was severe and immediate. Workers began experiencing mysterious illnesses, persistent fevers, unexplained rashes, and respiratory problems that correlated directly with time spent working the richest deposits. Multiple crew members reported identical nightmares featuring suffocation in golden dust and encounters with skeletal figures demanding return of stolen treasures. Local Native American tribal elders approached Todd with urgent warnings about the sacred nature of the land being disturbed. They explained that the ridge had been considered a burial ground for generations, where ancestral spirits rested and should never be disturbed by mining operations. The representatives warned that extracting gold from such territory would inevitably bring catastrophic consequences. Family tensions reached a breaking point when Hunter Hoffman directly confronted his father. "What if we're digging up a curse instead of a fortune?" The question forced Todd to confront uncomfortable truths about the price of his vindication, even as paranoia spread through the crew and long-standing friendships dissolved under the weight of suspicion and supernatural dread. A veteran crew member with decades of experience abruptly quit, claiming he was tormented by recurring nightmares of drowning in molten gold every night since excavation began. His departure created a ripple effect of fear that threatened to destroy the operation from within. Despite mounting evidence of supernatural interference and psychological deterioration, the gold continued flowing in ever-increasing quantities, creating a moral dilemma that pitted extraordinary success against mounting evidence of terrible hidden costs. The production numbers that emerged from Todd's operation shattered every prediction and exceeded every benchmark in modern mining history. The first month alone produced $25 million in verified gold bullion, creating logistical challenges no one had anticipated when planning began. Individual nuggets discovered during extraction defied belief. Gold masses, the size of human fists, regularly jammed sluicing equipment, forcing miners to hand-sort glowing chunks that represented lifetime discoveries for most prospectors. The largest specimens required multiple men to lift safely, their weight and purity creating handling problems that standard equipment hadn't been designed to address. Production escalated with mathematical precision that seemed almost supernatural. $10 million weeks became routine, then escalated to $15 million, then $20 million. Each cleanup operation produced heavier yields than the previous one, creating exponential growth curves that mining engineers declared theoretically impossible. The sheer volume required extraordinary security measures. Armored trucks arrived under military-style escort, their crews armed and nervous about transporting unprecedented wealth through Oregon's remote wilderness. The convoys resembled wartime supply operations more than routine mining shipments, complete with air support and electronic surveillance. Local banking institutions found themselves completely overwhelmed by the sudden influx of precious metal. Vault facilities designed for normal commercial deposits became overcrowded within days, forcing emergency arrangements with regional Federal Reserve banks and private security companies. The logistics of storing, cataloging, and processing such massive quantities created bureaucratic challenges never before encountered in Oregon's history. Standing in his processing facility, surrounded by gold bars stacked like construction materials, Todd surveyed the accumulating wealth with vindication and disbelief. His quiet words captured the magnitude of what he had accomplished. "This is the strike of 10 lifetimes." The phrase became his legacy statement, a summation validating decades of criticism and failure through unprecedented success. Success attracted hostile attention from competitors who had previously dismissed Todd as irrelevant. Rival mining operations throughout the Pacific Northwest began filing aggressive lawsuits, challenging his land claims and mining rights. Legal arguments focused on alleged trespassing violations and environmental assessments that supposedly hadn't been properly completed before excavation. Industrial espionage became a constant threat as unknown drones buzzed overhead with increasing frequency. The unmanned aircraft carried sophisticated surveillance equipment capable of mapping operations and identifying the most productive sites. Attempts to trace the operators led nowhere, suggesting coordination by well-funded organizations with significant resources. International mining consortiums approached Todd with acquisition offers starting at $50 million and escalating rapidly as production numbers became public. A Canadian corporation offered immediate cash payment for complete operational control, but Todd's refusal to negotiate deepened hostility and suspicion throughout the industry. Violence entered the equation when rifle shots shattered nighttime silence around the mining camp. Bullets pierced equipment housings and storage facilities, creating an atmosphere of fear among crew members who had signed up for mining work, not combat. Security consultants recommended armed guards and defensive fortifications that transformed the camp into something resembling a military outpost. Government surveillance added another layer of complexity as rumors spread about federal agents shadowing gold shipments. Officially monitoring for tax compliance, the agents were actually concerned about market destabilization if massive quantities entered circulation without proper controls. The prospect of $100 million production worried economists who feared disruption of carefully balanced precious metals markets. The mounting pressure from legal, financial, and physical threats created a siege mentality among Todd's crew. What had begun as mining had evolved into warfare, with Todd positioned as the primary target of forces wanting either to control or destroy his unprecedented success. The discovery that would define Todd's legacy occurred during routine excavation that went catastrophically wrong, then miraculously right. A section of seemingly stable ground collapsed without warning, creating a dangerous cave-in that initially threatened both equipment and personnel safety. As emergency crews assessed damage and ensured worker safety, headlamps penetrated the newly opened void and revealed something that defied comprehension. The collapse had exposed an enormous underground cavern whose walls shimmered with gold deposits so concentrated they created their own illumination in artificial light. Massive quartz veins formed cathedral-like arches throughout the cavern, their crystalline formations glowing like stained glass windows in a temple dedicated to wealth and precious metals. The geological formations suggested millions of years of mineral accumulation concentrated in a single, accessible location. The crew's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Some miners fell to their knees in religious awe, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they witnessed. Others stood paralyzed, too shaken to move or speak. The cavern represented wealth beyond calculation, a natural treasure room that exceeded every prospector's wildest fantasy. Expert geologists brought in to assess the discovery estimated exposed ore deposits worth over $100 million in immediately accessible gold. The calculations didn't include deeper deposits that ground-penetrating radar suggested might extend far beyond what could be visually observed from the entrance. Standing at the threshold of the underground treasure chamber, holding a chunk of pure gold that reflected his headlamp beam like a mystical talisman, Todd made the declaration that would become his defining moment. "This is why we never quit." The words captured both his personal vindication and the universal truth that extraordinary success requires extraordinary persistence against overwhelming odds. The Jackpot cavern represented the culmination of everything Todd had suffered and sacrificed to achieve, proof that his lifetime of ridicule and failure had led to something genuinely historic and transformative. News of Todd's $100 million discovery exploded across media platforms with unprecedented intensity. Headlines screaming, "Hoffman hits $100 million jackpot," dominated screens and front pages nationwide, capturing public imagination in ways that transcended typical industry coverage. The media attention transformed sleepy Oregon towns into chaotic boomtowns overnight. Motels operating at partial capacity suddenly found themselves booked solid, with prospectors, investors, and curiosity seekers hoping to capitalize on gold rush fever that Todd's success had ignited throughout the Pacific Northwest. Thousands of amateur treasure hunters descended upon Oregon's wilderness, armed with metal detectors and dreams of discovering their own jackpot deposits. Local law enforcement found themselves overwhelmed by the sudden influx of inexperienced prospectors who lacked wilderness survival skills or proper mining knowledge. Political figures arrived with promises of job creation and economic development, while quietly drafting legislation to capture mining revenues through taxation and royalties. State and federal politicians saw opportunities to claim credit for economic boom while ensuring government participation in the wealth being generated. Local communities became deeply divided over the implications of Todd's success. Business owners celebrated economic opportunities created by increased tourism and investment. Environmental activists and indigenous rights advocates protested environmental damage and cultural desecration represented by large-scale operations on sacred tribal lands. Todd found himself simultaneously celebrated as an economic savior and condemned as a destructive outsider who had upset rural Oregon's delicate balance. The contradiction positioned him as both messiah and outlaw, worshipped by those who benefited from his success and cursed by those who viewed his operation as fundamentally destructive to their way of life. The implications of Todd's discovery extended far beyond Oregon's borders, creating ripple effects throughout global precious metals markets that worried economists and government advisors. The sudden introduction of massive gold quantities threatened to destabilize price equilibrium that central banks had worked decades to maintain. Gold prices experienced unprecedented volatility as traders struggled to assess long-term implications of Todd's production capabilities. Initial price declines caused panic selling among investors fearing permanent depression of precious metals values. Subsequent price surges created buying frenzies, suggesting markets were wildly overreacting to incomplete information. International investors from Beijing to Moscow began attempting covert buyouts through intermediary corporations and shell companies. Offers escalated rapidly as foreign governments realized that controlling such massive production could provide significant leverage in international economic negotiations. Conspiracy theorists developed elaborate explanations for Todd's success, claiming he had discovered lost Jesuit treasure caches or ancient Templar deposits deliberately hidden for centuries. Internet forums buzzed with speculation about secret maps, religious artifacts, and mystical knowledge that supposedly explained how a failed television miner had achieved impossible success. Netflix announced production of the Oregon Klondike documentary series, committing significant resources to comprehensive coverage chronicling Todd's journey from early failures through ultimate vindication. The streaming commitment catapulted him to international celebrity status and global fascination. Standing before international media representatives who had traveled worldwide to cover his story, Todd delivered a statement that captured both personal vindication and defiance toward critics. "They mocked me. But Oregon never lies." The phrase became his signature declaration, a summary of triumph, validating his lifelong conviction that extraordinary success required extraordinary faith in the face of universal skepticism. When final accounting was completed, Todd's Oregon operation had produced over $100 million in verified gold bullion, with geological models suggesting billions in additional deposits remained accessible beneath the ridge's surface. The numbers represented not just financial success, but vindication of a lifetime pursuing dreams others had dismissed as impossible fantasies. Official recognition came through geographic designation changes, preserving Todd's achievement for future generations. The ridge was formally renamed Hoffman's Jackpot by the Oregon State Geographic Board, etching his success into the permanent historical record of American mining achievements. The crew that shared Todd's triumph found themselves forever changed by the experience. Some chose to take their profits and abandon mining entirely, psychologically broken by supernatural experiences and physical dangers they had endured. Others remained convinced that greater treasures waited beneath Oregon's soil and vowed to continue excavation despite mounting evidence of cursed ground. Todd faced the ultimate moral reckoning that accompanies extraordinary success achieved at extraordinary cost. He could take his fortune and retire to comfort and security, or continue clawing deeper into land that seemed to whisper doom with every shovelful of gold, rich earth emerging from its depths. The psychological toll was evident in his final filmed statement, delivered as Oregon's sun set behind him and cast long shadows across the ridge that had made him rich. Holding a gold bar representing both vindication and burden, Todd whispered words suggesting his story was far from over. This is only chapter 1. Todd Hoffman's $100 million comeback stands as testament to the power of persistence against overwhelming criticism and the dangerous allure of dreams that refuse to die. The Oregon Ridge continues producing gold at unprecedented rates while exacting psychological prices from everyone who works its cursed ground. Whether Todd will pursue the additional billions that surveys suggest remain buried beneath Hoffman's jackpot remains an open question. But one thing cannot be questioned. The man once mocked as television's greatest mining failure has written his legacy in $100 million worth of Oregon gold, proving that in America, redemption remains possible for those willing to risk everything in pursuit of vindication. The curse and fortune remain inseparably intertwined, waiting to see whether Todd Hoffman has the courage to continue digging deeper into ground that has given him everything he ever wanted, and possibly everything he should fear.